Jack from Florida, what's on your mind?
I've heard a lot of your discussions with different libertarians over the last couple weeks as I prepared to call in. But I wanted to make sure that you guys got to talk to a true libertarian about true libertarian ideas, such as democracy.
Is that you?
Such as...
Hold on, I'm sorry.
That's me.
Is it James? What's your name?
Jack, yeah.
Jack. You are a true libertarian.
That's me.
Okay. Just for the sake of our audience, will you explain to us what a true libertarian is? Because we've had a lot of libertarians on, right? I mean, I don't know how many of those debates have, but everybody from a Ron Paul advisor to a candidate for governor in New York from the Libertarian Party. We had the chairman of the Libertarian Party, maybe from Florida. I can't remember which one it was. I'm just curious, what makes you a true libertarian as opposed to other ones?
So the fake libertarians that keep calling into this show, especially, they tend to talk a lot about how they just don't want to pay taxes, or that they just want to, I don't know, be able to buy whatever light bulbs they want. But at the end of the day, they're not rooted in the true principles of people like Thomas Paine and John Locke that really set up the foundation of libertarianism. And so they often will choose to oppose one hierarchy in form of another.
Right.
In support of another.
That is true. Like, a lot of these people are what I call them as neo-confederates, right? Like, they're perfectly willing to have the states abridge people's rights. Somehow that's better than their perception of the federal government abridging rights.
Smaller.
For sure. And they'll often talk about, the size of government. And I agree with them that the size of government should be smaller in certain ways, but they're not as interested in exploring kind of why that is.
Right. What part of government should be smaller?
Well, for example, in a functioning, I guess, system that best represents people, I could see a reason to, say, abolish one of the two chambers of Congress so that we only have one. To really streamline the process. And maybe
Which one?
we should abolish the Senate because it doesn't represent people properly.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, it's French Revolution stuff.
I mean, look, I've been saying for a while that the Senate should go the way of the House of Lords and become more ornamental, because the House of Representatives is more direct democracy. So we might have some agreements here.
Yeah, when most people say shrink the size of government, they're not literally talking about the number of lawmakers. But would you be in favor of one house unicameralism? But would you be in favor of expanding the number of Congress people? Because we stopped at 435, like in the early 1900s, with a population that I think was like, I don't know, not even half, probably like 75%. I mean, 25% of what we have now.
Yeah. So in the functioning government that I would like to see, I would like to see the number of representatives in America who could decide the laws and such be, somewhere around 250 million Americans. But since we don't live in that ideal of expanding the vote to people, then I would say that the best way to do it would be to take the smallest state, say Wyoming, and have the population of Wyoming be the population standard for districts. And I think that would work out to around 770 representatives.
Okay. All right.
I've actually heard that maybe in college as like one of the options that people were discussing to expand the House. So I'm in favor of that too.
Okay. And so, so you're talking about basically just, government reform, increasing democracy. The Senate is incredibly undemocratic body. Okay. good. So what else? What else did you want to promote?
So I think also, while we're talking about reducing the size of government, I think it's important that we take a look at the executive branch and really take a look at how we could maybe rework some things, maybe dismantle some things. So, for example, we have way too much power invested in the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, the TSA, the CBP, and ICE. And I think that each of those should really be looked at closely as ways to kind of remove some of their power. I mean,
how about
FBI,
abolishing
let's
ICE?
not
How about
forget
abolishing
how many
ICE?
civil rights leaders they murdered.
Yeah.
And the CIA, let's not forget how many socialists abroad they've murdered just because, effectively they're engaging in cancel culture of socialist ideas.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, the NSA, why? Like, we don't really need the NSA in the same way that we do, especially if we have the FBI doing the same thing.
Okay.
Especially if we have.
All right. So I think, we're all on the same page. I think we're all in favor of shrinking the so-called national security apparatus, without a doubt, curbing them, at least in terms of, and curbing their ability to do stuff that I think we would agree is nefarious. What other policies? What other policies that you would want to pursue as a true libertarian?
Sure. So as a true libertarian, obviously I have a lot of concerns around private property and private property rights.
Okay. More explicit for people. I know what you're talking about, but I'm not sure everybody else does. You want there to be more sacrosanct, more protected private property rights.
In a way, I think that the rights to private property belong exclusively to those who labor on them, and perhaps the community at large. For example, I don't understand the notion that some so-called libertarians would push that you have the right to own an apartment building and be a slumlord. I think that should just be public housing.
Okay, but let's get back to, I want to get back to this, that your right to property should be a function of your working on it. I think this is what Walter Block was arguing. When do you start that?
Well, I started with whoever the original owner of that private property was. So, for example, if we're considering land, I don't think that we should have the ability for any individual to own land, because the communities there should exercise control over it, and also the people who are working that land. And there should be consideration for the people who originally worked that land, who was stolen from through violations of the non-aggression principle.
Right. Okay. So you would return much of the United States to indigenous folks.
As much as one feasibly could do, of course, a big part of that would be in bringing indigenous folks into the United States electoral system more, in such a fashion that they.
But we're just talking about private property.
A way to represent themselves.
Yeah, we're not talking about enfranchisement. We're talking about private property. Like, I mean, wouldn't every claim to private property in this country be suspect, or at least much of it, because it was it was not legitimate on day one?
Yes.
Okay. And all right. I mean, this is good. I'm not convinced that, I think there's a lot of libertarians who would take issue with everything you're saying, but
yeah, actually, on that note, caller, can I just say the Libertarian Party had a tweet recently in response to Joe Biden tweeting out the word democracy, and the Libertarian Party's response was this. democracy equals mob rules that endangers individual rights. You're not the Libertarian Party's type of libertarian, I guess.
No, I think the Libertarian Party of America is the most soy beta cuck party imaginable. I think that they want to abolish democracy, so-called majority rule, in favor of minority rule. And we would end up with a tyranny of the minority. And the Libertarian Party in particular wants that minority to be, of course, mostly white capital owners, very similar to the GOP. So I think that the Libertarian Party of America has lost a lot of the roots of libertarianism by not really embracing what the word really means.
Do you feel that workers in a just a generic factory, let's just say, should have a greater stake in what they produce? I know that they have entered into a contract and they're being paid, but we know that that the dynamics between management or capital and workers is such that workers are disempowered in that negotiation. So the negotiation itself is also suspect. Do you think we should have a more direct, essentially like almost like a cooperative model, or one where, workers have a far greater equity in the company?
Yeah, I think that would be a good start. I mean, I live in America. This is supposed to be the land of the free, but every time we clock into work, we're expected to give up our freedom and no longer have a voice. If we're really going to be, any kind of free society, then that includes the workers finally, getting rid of their masters, just the way that serfs overthrew the lords, and that that slaves liberated themselves mostly from their masters. I am asking,
I'm going to ask this next question because we just got an IM saying this guy just called himself a libertarian, so Sam would keep him on the line. I mean,
yeah. Yeah, dude, you might be a socialist. I mean, you might want to look into that.
So the libertarianism that I am specifically talking about, and yes, by the way, you might also know me as Robert from Connecticut. I called in about semiconductors a little while ago. But the main thing here is that when people throw around the word libertarian in America, they're ignoring the roots of libertarianism, which is something that Jamie once got kind of upset about. But libertarianism is not this weird ANCAP fetishization of hierarchy that we see in America. And if, people want to keep associating themselves with libertarianism, then they should read the origin of libertarianism, such as like Le Libertaire, the newspaper that was published in, I want to say France, but I think actually it was written while the author was in New York. But yeah, of course, I'm a communist, guys.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate it. I would say, and thank you. That was a great call. I really enjoyed it. I would say like the attempt, and I don't know that this is your project, but I appreciate it. Good job, caller. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
The attempt, and I don't think this is your project, but the attempt to reform or reappropriate the term libertarianism, I would suggest is a fool's errand because, it would be nice if we promoted a different type of libertarianism, and that's the one that caught on. I would certainly contemplate running for the presidential nomination of the Libertarian Party and espouse, I think, fairly, similar proposals, at least the ones that you outlined when we were talking about. And, but, that ship has sailed. You're not getting that word back. And so best to not conflate things, in my estimation.
I mean, we're already trying to rehabilitate socialist and communist. You don't want to throw libertarian on the pile.
Right.